Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, Street Business School, How Empowering African Women Help Support Conservation, presented by Devin Hibbard. Devin is the founder and CEO of Street Business School, an entrepreneurial training program that helps women living in poverty. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Devin. I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with all of you today. So let me just start by giving you a quick background about me. This is a picture of me and my two sons when they were littler in Uganda, in front of Murchison Falls. Some of you may have traveled to Uganda with Nat Hab. I've lived there about 5 of the last 15 years, and during that time, I've started 2 nonprofit social enterprises, Street Business School, which you'll hear more about today, and Bead for Life, which some of you may also be familiar with. So this topic of conservation is near and dear to my heart. I know that all of you are here because you care about conservation. If you're a Nat Hab traveler, it is obviously one of the things that you think about in your daily life and how you choose to travel. And I know over the last weeks and months, you've had lots of incredible webinars about black bears and sloths and whales. And so you might be asking yourself today, what the heck is a webinar that's talking about women and poverty doing in this lineup? So I hope today in the next half an hour to walk through the deep connections between women, poverty, conservation, and also climate change. The UN has recognized that poverty is an issue that is deeply connected to environmental degradation or environmental preservation. In fact, the UN recognizes that 70% of people who are living in poverty turn to the natural environment in order to meet their basic needs. So what does that look like? It could be people who are living in scarce conditions, who are going into the forests and cutting down wood for fuel. That's how they cook every day. So you're causing deforestation. It could be people who are trying to feed their families, and so they're poaching. Mostly they're poaching things like antelope or monkeys, not the big charismatic species like rhinos. But we see in places where people and environment are in close connection, there's also some hunting or poisoning that happens of larger species. So in my time in Uganda, I was aware of situations where communities that were on the edge of protected areas would have elephants come and raid their crops, the things they depended on to feed their children. And they would kill the elephants in retribution or to protect their crops. Or a lion that was preying on cattle and was poisoned as a result. So conflicts that happen because of poverty that can affect animals as well. And then of course you get into issues around smallholder farmers who farm the land every year again and again, and that leads to degraded soil and erosion, things like that. So there's a lot of pressures that are caused by poverty. People who are poor, though, they don't hate the environment. They're not bad people. They're really just trying to survive. So I want to stop for a second and ask each one of you, if your children or your grandchildren were hungry, if they didn't have enough to eat, is there anything that you wouldn't do to help them survive? That's the situation that many, many people who are living in poverty are facing every day, and it's why they turn to the environment. Climate change is also an issue that is very closely aligned with poverty, and particularly looking for solutions and looking for the ways to involve women and girls. So this is a book that many of you are probably familiar with, Drawdown. It is a book that has been researched for years, led by the scientist Paul Hawken with many, many other scientists, and their goal was to identify the 100 most impactful ways that you could reduce climate change. And they quantified every single solution. And what they found, to some people's surprise, is that in the top 10 things that we can do to address climate change, focusing on women and girls are 2 of those top 10. So you can see here, educating girls and looking at reproductive health care and access to family planning are 2 of the top 10 things that could change or mitigate climate change. So you can see, and poverty, of course, is very related to women and girls. A disproportionate number of women are living in poverty. So you can see that poverty is, even though it sounds like it might be a funny topic, it actually has a lot to do with conservation and successful conservation efforts. So if acting on poverty is important, how do we do that? I want to talk to you today about one innovative program, an organization that I work with called Street Business School. And I'd like to start by showing a video about our work.
I am a businesswoman. I am a businesswoman.
I've seen women start up businesses with less than $1 and they've transformed their lives.
Waliwo tugenda ntuyitamu nga tekyokola ki tebisaanidde n'ogamba mukyala munange yimirira na kino osobole okuvaayo oyimirewo n'abaana bo.
Nali nga sinaba kuyingira SBS nali sikola.
Naye ndaba ng'abaana nabo osobola bawerayo kati ndaba olugendo lwange lulungi nenyumizamu nnyo.
So the first thing Street Business School does is to make them realize that they can take charge of their lives. Then we give them practical tools to start and grow their own businesses. We actually walk the journey with you. We call it coaching.
There's something you're going to learn from me and there's something I'm going to learn from you. You understand your situation better than I do, and I'm going to guide you.
2 years after they've graduated, we see an average increase in income for our women that we serve in the program of 211%.
Buli ekiri mu nnyumba nga taata kye yandikoze gw'obeera okikola. Emmere teriiwo omwana tojja mugamba akitegeere, oyina kutambula, oyina kusafaringa nga bw'osobola ofune abaana kye balya. Baleetanga abakyala ab'enjawulo nga batuwa obujulizi. Ekyo kyannyamba nnyo nakyo ne ngamba mu butuufu nzaani nange nsobola.
These are the NGOs that are working at the grassroots. They are the experts of their communities. So we share with them the Street Business School approach, and they're able to go and implement this in their communities.
In only 4 months, we have been able to train 230 women. Any organization can use this model.
We've got 39 partners in 10 different countries. Our goal is to reach 1 million women by 2027. We are empowering women to believe in themselves.
So as you saw in that video, Street Business School is a program that is using the power of business and the power of entrepreneurship to help people all around the world lift their families out of poverty. It's a program that really combines 2 key strategies. One of them is business knowledge. So just like a business school anywhere, we are teaching fundamental business principles. But what we have done is we've uniquely targeted them to the needs of people who are living in extreme poverty. What that means is that many of the people that we serve have not finished primary school, they may be illiterate, and they also don't come with a lot of confidence that they know how to do business. So this is one of our classrooms, this photo. I share this with you so that you really see how close to the street we are. We take this training to women in their local community. It's taught in the local language. And if you could pan back on this picture, you've seen many of these women have small children. They're playing in the back. So it is very basic. This is actually a church, I believe. You can see it's got open air walls. In this kind of setting, in a 6-month time period, we teach business fundamentals. And these are concepts like bookkeeping. So if you can't read and write, how are you going to do bookkeeping and start a business? We teach women 3 different methods of how to do bookkeeping. The first method is a paper-based form that has money in, money out, and then some simple categorization so that they could do a little bit of analysis about their business. The second form is also based on paper. It's just money in, money out, right? If they need a little bit more simplified version. But if you can't read and write, those two are not going to help you. So the third technique that we teach in terms of bookkeeping is we teach women to use an apron to keep track of their money. The way it works is that if you have a small business, let's say you have a vegetable stand and you sell tomatoes and eggplants, you'll have two pockets on your apron. And in the morning when you go buy your tomato stock, you're going to take money out of your tomato pocket, you're going to buy your stock, and then throughout the day as you sell tomatoes, you're going to put the money from the tomatoes into that pocket. At the end of the day, you're going to know two important things. Number one, you're going to know, did you make money or lose money? Is there more money in your pocket than you started with? And you're also going to be able to do some simple analysis to know whether your tomatoes or your eggplant are more profitable. So this is an example of how we take concepts that are critical to knowing how to succeed in business and making them really accessible to women who are living in poverty. Street Business School also is not a specific training program that helps you learn how to do only one type of business. So you might open a vegetable stall, but you might open many other types of businesses. And particularly in rural areas, we see a variety of businesses. Things like one woman who had a banana tree in her backyard, and so she started making little small banana pancakes and selling them to school children who were walking past for a couple cents each. Another person has started rearing chickens. That's actually a pretty common one, raising poultry for eggs or for meat. We also see some people who are trying to do simple value additions. So they might be growing peanuts, and instead of selling raw peanuts, they're starting to sell peanut butter. So those are the kind of things that Street Business School helps. Whatever you want to do, how do you think about it with a business lens? The second piece of Street Business School, which is really important, is confidence. Because we find that most of the women that we work with, most of the people that we work with, don't come in the beginning of the program with a lot of confidence. They've lived in poverty, many of them for their entire lives. Some of the women that we work with have been told that they're not as good as their brothers. And so they don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I've got a great idea, I'm gonna go get a loan and start a business. So perhaps the more important thing that we do is what we call coaching. We help people start to believe in their own abilities. And we do this through one-on-one interaction with each participant, but we also bring in a lot of alumni. And when you can see those alumni telling their stories, people who were just like them, you can start to see a change in people's eye. You can start to see people who think, wow, if that person was able to do this, maybe I can do it. And what that results in is not only a change in material well-being, but it's a change in how somebody thinks about themselves. And it's about building and enhancing human dignity. So you can see the look on this woman's eye. I love this woman. This is one of our graduation ceremonies. And you can just see that what she's gained is far beyond a skill or a vocation. It is that pride that she has. So it's those two components that really make our work effective. This is a woman named Ruth. When Ruth was very young, she had a baby, her little boy named Bashir. You can see him in the photo here. And then Bashir's father abandoned the family. And so when Bashir was just an infant, Ruth was left to fend for the two of them herself. She did this by wandering the neighborhood and begging her neighbors to allow her to wash their laundry. And on days that she found work washing laundry, she would make about 75 cents. And she and Bashir would eat one meal. And she told me that on days that nobody needed laundry done, that she would lay in bed and try to ignore her hunger pains and the cries of her young baby. And she said at that point that she had no hope. She didn't see any hope for the future. And then she met Street Business School. And she started very quickly to think about ideas. And after a session called Finding Capital and Starting Small, Ruth opened this small vegetable stand that you can see behind her. Still very basic, still very small. But through this vegetable stand, Ruth was able to start to make a small profit. And then she realized that if she got up very, very early in the morning and traveled 3 hours north by bus once a week, that she could actually go to a wholesale location, a rural location where they were growing the vegetables, and she could buy the products and bring them back, and that increased her profit. And then she realized that not only could she do that for her vegetable stand, but she could start supplying other vegetable stands in this community. And because of these different innovations in this small business, Ruth was able to go from earning about $22 a month to $177 a month after she started this business. I spoke to Ruth after she had increased her income, and I asked her what was the most important thing that she had learned in street business school. And she replied in the local language, Luganda. She said, Obutenyoma. And Obutenyoma translates as not underestimating myself. So the most important thing she had learned was not the business knowledge, was not all the core pieces of how you put a business together. It was to believe in herself. It was to have confidence that she could be successful. And we have seen that again and again with the various women that we serve. Because we really know that transformation is at the intersection of that belief in oneself, plus the knowledge, once you have that belief, the knowledge of how you create a successful business. And belief and confidence is not the only thing that we see, of course. We're really looking at what is the change in someone's material well-being. So this graph shows what we see in the course of our program. Women go from earning about $1.35 a day when they start our program, which means they're living in extreme poverty as defined by the World Bank. At graduation, after 6 months, they've increased their income 54%. But we also want to see whether this is a sustainable intervention. And so we actually wait 2 years after people have graduated to go back and evaluate how they're doing. And what we see at the 2-year mark is not only that they've sustained an increase in income, but that it's continued, and they're now earning $4.19 on average. It's hard for us living in America to understand what it means to live on $1.35 a day. But from my experience, having lived and worked with women in this circumstance, what it looks like is that the family's likely only eating 1 meal a day. They're probably not eating meat, maybe only once or twice a year at Christmas. They are often not able to pay the fees to keep their children in school. Even if they're public schools, they have to pay for things like shoes or uniforms. It might mean that families are having to make really awful, difficult decisions about which child gets health care, which child can see a doctor. And it often means that they're living in substandard housing. So if the rain comes down, the roof probably leaks. $4.19 a day doesn't sound like a lot from where we sit, but that is actually transformational. Women who are earning $4.19 a day are above the global poverty line, believe it or not. It means that they're eating 2 or 3 meals a day. It means that their children are in school. It means that they're getting necessary health care. The closest example I think that we can think about is if you were working here in the United States and you were earning $135,000 a year, and 2 years later your income had increased to $419,000 a year, what kind of change would that entail in your life? That's one way perhaps to think about it. So we had this program in Uganda. It was very successful. We were seeing people change their lives. And yet I knew this statistic in the back of my mind, and it just kept me awake at night sometimes. 1 out of 10 people, 700 million people on the planet today, live in extreme poverty, struggle every single day to feed their families and to survive. And so we thought a lot about how could we do more? How could we scale our program to reach more people? But because we didn't want to just open new offices all over the world, get new land cruisers and hire new staff, and we didn't feel like that was very cost effective. And we also didn't feel like we had the expertise outside of Uganda to go to other communities. So what did we do? We took a page from the business world. We did something called social franchising. I'm sure everybody on this call is familiar with a franchise, right? We think about McDonald's or Subway sandwiches, where a proven product or model is replicated in many other locations. So that's what we're doing, but we're doing it for social outcomes. We have taken the Street Business School model and we have partnered with local organizations, nonprofit organizations, to take the street business model to bring their local expertise about the communities that they serve and to implement it. And in that way, we are now active in 21 countries. I think the video, which was produced about a year and a half ago, said 10 countries. So we've had pretty quick expansion and growth on our way to reaching 1 million people by 2027. That's our goal. We also know that because many, many families who are living in poverty have larger family size, that when we reach 1 million people, 5 million children are going to benefit. So let me give you an example of one of our partners. This is a picture of the border between windy, impenetrable forest in Uganda and the surrounding community. I'm guessing that many of you on this call may have had the incredible fortune to travel to Uganda and to see the mountain gorillas there. But I think this picture illustrates the incredible human pressure, the population density in Uganda and in many parts around the world on the natural environments that border protected areas. You can see that every inch of land here is farmed right up to that boundary. So one of the early partners that we trained as we started expanding outside of Uganda was Wildlife Conservation Society, a conservation group that many of you are likely familiar with. WCS was working in a number of areas like this, where human population was close to protected areas where there were important species and ecosystems that they were trying to protect. And what they saw is that the communities around the parks were illegally cutting the forest down. They were poaching illegally. And when they really tried to understand the root cause, what they realized is that people were doing that because they were trying to feed their families, to survive, to cook every day. And they realized that if they could bring in alternative business opportunities, alternative livelihoods, that they would be able to reach their mission faster. And so WCS came and got trained and implemented a program in one of the regions in Uganda where the community was close to a national park, and was able to significantly increase the number of businesses and the income in the community bordering the park. And that helped them reach their mission faster. We work with many different partners like WCS, but one of the interesting things that we find is that Street Business School is appropriate for any organization that finds that poverty is exacerbating the issues that they're working on. Some of you are probably familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is what's shown on this slide. And we have seen that in the 97 partners that we have in the 21 countries around the world, our partners are working on 14 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So truly, poverty is something, and poverty alleviation is something that actually helps us move towards all of these goals. And even if it's an organization that's working on something like children's education and is helping the families of children increase their income so they can keep their children in school and pay for their education, those are things that have ripple effects beyond just the child. We know that that's one of the key drivers of mitigating climate change, for example. So it is really this virtuous circle that we're seeing, equipping partners across the spectrum with skills for them to do their training. So this is what we were doing all the way up until February of this year. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit. The health pandemic that is now raging around the world is followed immediately by an economic pandemic. So we already know that it is very likely that 2 billion people will see their earnings decrease as a result of COVID-19. And the estimates that are coming out now are that between 100 and 500 million people are going to be pushed back into poverty. It's going to potentially wipe out decades of progress against poverty the world has been making. And as you've learned here, this also is a potential economic crisis. As more people are pushed into poverty and look to the natural environment in order to meet their basic needs, there will be increased pressure. We've seen already in the tourism sector that 100 million people have lost their jobs already as of today. I pulled this photo from a newspaper in Kenya. There was a guide, a safari guide, who realized that all the workers in the tourism industry in the Masai Mara, where some of you have also maybe been fortunate enough to travel, who had lost their jobs were not able to eat. And so this is a food distribution program in that region to help some of those people who have been displaced by the pandemic. Another example of an amazing initiative to bridge for people who have lost their jobs is the Nat Hab Community Relief Fund. Many of you have probably donated to this. I heard yesterday that actually this fund is now topping $300,000, which I think is incredible. And this fund is really helping those people who have a connection to Nat Hab lodges and facilities who have lost their jobs to be able to survive in this time, and hopefully helping them bridge this time until a moment when some of those jobs come back. So I have to tell you, having lived and worked in Uganda for many years, knowing many of the people who work in the tourism sector, if you contributed to this fund, thank you. It really is making a difference on the front lines. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are not connected to Nat Hab, and for those people, there is Street Business School. So Street Business School is kind of uniquely positioned to step into this moment of economic crisis. Because we are helping people survive in the informal sector, we're not trying to connect people to jobs in banks or shops. We're helping them become entrepreneurs, and we know that before COVID hit that was important. And now as COVID hits and 100 to 500 million people are forced back into poverty, those jobs that they maybe have had and lost are not going to come back in the next 6 months, probably not in the next 18 months. And so they will have to survive in the informal community. And in particular, they will have to survive through entrepreneurship. And so Street Business School is really trying to lean in. This is a time of economic crisis, but we really believe that this is the moment not to shrink away from big, ambitious goals, but to step forward. And we are doubling down on our commitment to partner with communities to help them survive during this time. We also are really thinking about how the economic effect will drive the impact on environment and conservation. And I would love to ask for your help in this. One of the goals that we have for this year is really to look at how we might partner with organizations in critical hotspot areas where there's threatened habitat or creatures by equipping those organizations with Street Business School so they can work with the communities. If this is something that you feel passionate about, if you travel with Nat Hab because conservation is your issue and you have ideas that might help us do this, we would love to partner with you. Some of the ways that you could work with us, we have a 6-minute survey that would help guide our strategy. If you have an amazing organization that you know or love out there that is doing conservation work effectively, that is being impacted by this crisis, we would love for you to refer them to us. We'd love to talk with them about whether Street Business School might be a good fit. And we're also creating a focus group that will help us think about and launch this strategy. So if any of those are interesting to you, you can write my colleague Cindy at streetbusinessschool.org and let her know that you'd like to participate in one or all of those. With that, I will stop. I want to make sure that we leave some time for questions. And I just want to say that in caring about conservation, in choosing to travel with Nat Hab and put your dollars towards an organization and a company that's making a difference, you're part of the solution. And I think it's growing ever more important to think about some of the problems we face in a holistic way. And so teasing out those connections between poverty and women and girls and conservation and climate change and many other issues is ever more important. And I appreciate that even though we had no charismatic species on this presentation, that you've joined today to learn more about how conservation and poverty are linked. So with that, let me stop. Hopefully there's lots of questions for me, and I'll turn it over to Kendall to see if there's questions we can answer.
Thank you, Devin. Yes, we do have some questions for you, and I'd like to remind everyone watching, if you have questions for Devin, you can submit those in the control panel under the questions field. Okay, first question. Are there different tactics used with communities that function via a bartering system versus selling for cash?
That is a great question. You know, one of the reasons that our strategy for scaling Street Business School has been in partnering with the expertise of local organizations is because we feel like they are best positioned to know. So there are some organizations I know who are in very rural areas who are looking at ways that people might swap goods from their businesses rather than pay for them in cash. I'm not familiar with anyone who has done that entirely, you know, said we're not going to have any cash exchange, we're only going to barter. Although I did talk to a really interesting organization just last week who was using cryptocurrencies in developing countries to replace cash and allow people who were not in the cash economy to trade through cryptocurrencies. So maybe at some point we'll find partners who are interested in doing that.
And there's a lot of interest in whether you're experiencing any pushback from traditional culture or society, and what kind of reaction you've seen with the men in these communities.
Yeah, that's a great question. Street Business School, we continue to do our work in Uganda directly with women. We call this the Learning Lab because we think it's really important for us to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening at the grassroots level. And in all of our work for the past decade and a half, we have trained specifically women. We have seen that some of our partners, including WCS, actually trained women and men. So this is a Street Business School is not just for women. It's something that has been offered to both men and women. But in situations where an organization chooses to focus on women, there certainly are situations where we've seen that having women increase their income does shift the power dynamics. And so we ourselves and organizations that we've taught have learned how to support those communities. For example, we might have a counselor as part of our team that if women and, you know, if the men are jealous or if they are asking for the money from the women's business, that the counselor can go in and help mediate. But I have to say, by and large, what I have seen is that as women increase their income, the power dynamic absolutely does shift, and they start to have more decision-making power. That woman that I showed you in the graduation cap, she said to me, one of the things that has shifted, she said, now I am somebody in my community. People listen to me. My husband listens to me. The extended family listens to me. And so I would say, although those changes sometimes cause tension, that by and large, the shift is positive and it is giving women a greater role in the family. And it also enables them, if they're in abusive situations, to have the economic capacity to leave. So those are some of the changes that we see as this, as the dynamics in the family accommodate women now earning more.
And do the women who complete the program become teachers themselves?
Some women who have completed our program absolutely become teachers. In our program, we've hired them as coaches, we call them. So that's a formal way that some women become teachers. We also see that women are informally coaching people in their communities. So if a woman has opened a very successful vegetable stand, or maybe a restaurant, or she's selling used clothes, you know, her neighbors are all seeing that. And we see quite frequently that now she's mentoring one or two other people who came to her and said, how did you do that? You know, what was it that enabled you to be so successful? So we're definitely seeing that that is happening. And the other thing that we do is we really try and bring in many alumni to tell their story. And that, as I mentioned, is one of the most powerful things we do, that if they can talk about, you saw in the video, Stella said, I heard another woman and I heard what she had done. And I said, who am I not to do that? Like, why can't I do that same thing? So that's a powerful way that alumni are able to kind of give back to the women who are following in their footsteps.
And people want to know how you get the word out. How do you advertise this program within the communities?
Yeah, so here's how we do it in Uganda. This is the job that I want in my next lifetime. There's actually a job in Uganda of a guy who has a backpack with a speaker in the back and a microphone. And he walks through the local communities and he says in the local language, hey, all you entrepreneurs, people who might want to start businesses, next Tuesday, there's going to be a training in, you know, this open square or this church or this school. And people who are interested will then come. But we really, we try to focus on equal investment, right? We're not just giving away free stuff. We're not giving away any money as part of this. We don't do grants as part of this program. And we really want to know that people are invested in it, because that's part of the characteristic of having a successful business, is people who are willing to work hard. And because there's been so much, so many organizations that do, give free stuff out, there's kind of an expectation. So we might get 150 people the first day, and we say, look, this program is not like your normal nonprofit. You're going to have to work really hard, but if you do, you can change your life. And if you're still interested, come back next Tuesday. And next Tuesday, we get 100 people, and we say the same thing. And we say, come back next Tuesday. And on the third Tuesday, we get about 70 women who show up, and they've now invested 3 afternoons of their life to come and see what we're about. And that is how we vet those people who we think are committed enough to be trained, and those will be the people that we enroll into the program. So that's how we find women. We also try now to go from one community and graduate women, and then we'll go to the next adjacent community. And when we do that, there's enough people who have seen the success of women in the first community that the reputation precedes us, and so we have people who know it's successful and have heard a little bit about us and want to join. So that's how we do it. And then as we look to recruit or train other organizations, we're really looking for partners who are aligned in terms of their goals of using poverty eradication to solve the issues that they are working on. And we also work a lot with referrals. So, this is why I'm asking all of you, if you know an organization that you think would be a great partner to us, could use Street Business School, we'd love to know their name, because we look for people who are familiar with us and familiar with the partner to make those connections.
There are a few people who would like to see that slide that you had the information up as to who to contact about different organizations that they're aware of.
Fantastic. Love hearing that. So if people want to participate in any of these ways, you can write to my colleague Cindy at streetbusinessschool.org. Yeah, we'd love the Nat Hab community's help reaching this goal.
Great. Someone watching visited the International Rescue Committee's Small Business Savings and Loan Program in Kampala, and they were wondering if any of your graduates joined similar programs to get their funding.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question, because I think because of the popularity of microfinance around the world, in which people are given small loans to start businesses, there is a strong awareness in the importance of or access to loans. Street Business School, what we have found, there's no loans or grants given as part of Street Business School, and that's actually quite intentional. We do that because we are able to teach women how to start businesses, usually with between $7 and $12. You saw in that video, my colleague Phoebe said she's seen women open businesses with $1. We've definitely seen that. And what we teach is, how do you start with $1 or $7 or $12 and grow over time? So you're not opening your dream business on day one. One woman that I met in Uganda named Scovia, she started a restaurant, and the way she started, I think she scraped together $4, and she bought a cow's head and some charcoal, and she made cow's head soup, which is a thing in Uganda apparently. I've not tried it. And the very first day, she brought her own pots and pans from home, and she sat on a street corner and she served 7 plates of cow's head soup. Then she took her profits, and the next day she sold 9 plates, and the next day she sold 15. And now she has grown her business. She has actually like a half a shipping container, if you can picture what that looks like. When those things get too old to ship, they get sold off in countries like Uganda, and they cut them in half, and it's a restaurant. And you can go in and it seats like 5 people. But the point is, she didn't start with that. She started small. And the reason that we do this is because if somebody starts with $7 and then they go out of business, let's say coronavirus hits, or even that they have a health emergency and their child needs to go to the hospital and they have to liquidate all of the assets in their business. If they got a loan for $100 and then they have to liquidate their business, they will not start again. They don't believe they can get $100 again. But if they started with $5 or $6, they know they can find that money again. And so it creates this sense of resiliency. The place that loans and grants come in is once they have built a business or several businesses and they're ready to increase that, then they can go to the savings and loan or the microfinance bank and get a loan that helps them that helps them grow. So that's how we think about the role of grants or loans in Street Business School.
That was a great story. And on that point, someone asked, what's the most unique idea you've seen a graduate implement?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've seen thousands of businesses. Most of them are not revolutionary, right? We're talking about micro businesses. We're talking about, the vegetable stall or selling used shoes or clothes. But there are women who have done some really innovative things. One woman who actually worked very closely with her husband. Her husband had a little bit of training in woodworking, and they together opened a studio where they were making wooden toys and selling them. So that was pretty innovative. I hadn't seen that one before. Another woman opened a school. She was able, over time, she started with 1 classroom, kindergarten, and over time she was able to enroll students and add, I think she's now up to fifth grade. Another woman made sweaters. She bought some machines that helped her make sweaters. In Uganda, every kid has to have a sweater for school, and so she would go and sell them to schools. So those are some that are pretty unique. You don't see that every day, but there are some women who are just, I always say that it's my greatest gift to be able to have known so many of these women, and although they are desperately poor materially when they start, they are the most hardworking people I've ever met. It's like all that is needed is the smallest opportunity, and off they go. So it's an inspiration.
What age ranges do you typically see with the women who are joining, and are they often single or have families? Could you just fill us in a little bit more about these women?
We've trained women from 15 to 70, 75 maybe. So it runs the gamut, but the women that we have found are sort of the most ready For Street Business School, the typical profile would be somebody who's maybe between the ages of 25 and 30, who has either dropped out of school or finished school, not been able to find a job. Generally, they have at least one child, and they're the women who realize that getting married is not the silver bullet, that the man is not going to whisk them away on a white horse and they're going to live happily ever after. They've come to the realization that if they're going to do it, they're going to have to do it themselves, and they're ready to work hard. And so I would say that's sort of the sweet spot for Street Business School for us in Uganda, but I would also say that we have many, many partners who are focusing on adolescents, for example, 12 to 17. We have others that are working with men, with men as well. So again, that customization really allows an organization to take the training and to make it relevant to whatever population that they've been working with.
Do you use volunteers for teachers or other on-the-ground activities?
We don't use volunteers. Our training is, we really have a strong focus on the quality of the training, and we always use local staff to deliver the training. Because it's in the local language, nothing is taught in English. I never train because I don't speak the Luganda. So the trainers are all from the local community speaking the local language.
And where does the funding for Street Business School mostly come from?
Yeah, so the social franchise model is something that helps us have an earned income stream. We are teaching business and we also believe in business. And so, organizations invest to send staff members to become certified in Street Business School. So a portion of our income is through earned revenue, and our goal is to grow that each year. It's just under 10% right now, and the balance is philanthropic. So organizations, foundations, and individuals who donate to support our work and bring us to new areas.
Do you see a lot of students coming to you that don't know how to read or write, and do they have the opportunity within the school or maybe after school at some point to choose to learn to do so?
We definitely see a lot. Many of the people that we train don't read and write, particularly in rural areas. We find that's true. Street Business School has been created in order to be able to teach people how to get the concepts of Street Business School without learning to read and write. So it's not something that we offer, but there are some partners who are doing adult literacy programs that they will, supplement the Street Business School training that they're doing with an adult literacy program. But usually those are a longer, those take more than 6 months to become literate through those kind of programs.
Well, we are getting close to the top of the hour, and I want to give you time for some closing comments. So I'm going to hand it back over to you, Devin.
Thank you so much. This has been really an honor. I'm grateful that Nat Hab asked me to speak on this topic. I think the only thing that I would say is that we live in interesting times. We live in perhaps the most challenging moment for humanity in a century, and that challenge for humans also means challenges for animals. It means challenges for ecosystems and for the climate. And so I really just want to applaud and appreciate all of you who have chosen to partner with Nat Hab and to support Nat Hab through your travel choices. I think it's ever more important for us to think about systemic solutions. And, we really believe at Street Business School that poverty eradication and entrepreneurial training is a tool that can be used to support many, many ventures, many, many issue areas, but particularly to support environmental preservation and conservation work and positive results towards climate change. So thank you everybody for tuning in today for this quite unique webinar of Nat Hab. Thanks, Nat Hab, for inviting me. And please, if you have any ideas for us, do reach out to my colleague Cindy and let us know how you'd like to help us hit our goal this year. Thank you.
Well, it looks like someone's already emailed Cindy, so things are things are working. Well, Devin, the work you're doing is so commendable and so important, and I thank you so much for being here today. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today to watch. Be sure to join us next week for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We have posted next week's lineup on our website at nathab.com/webinars, and you can keep an eye out for our e-news announcement this Sunday. We did record today's presentation, so we'll have this replay up on our website probably Monday afternoon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks so much, Devin. Have a great weekend, everyone.